Welcome to Unfoolish Investing, everybody. We have reached episode 6. I'm Victor.
I'm Larry.
And today we are going to talk a little bit about CEOs and the good ones and the bad ones, and the reason why they're a good sign for investing in a company. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Top CEOs. To me, top CEOs equal investing magic. They are one of the main reasons why I buy a company stock. They are also some of the reasons why I will not buy a company's stock. One reason, one analogy that I've heard in the past, Larry, that I like to use is, would I trust this CEO with my children? And if I wouldn't trust the CEO with my children, there's a good chance I might not be willing to buy stock in that particular company. But I always like to start off with a little bit of positive before we jump into the negative. What do you think?
I love it. Let's start out with the best of the best.
All right. We've talked about the first one in the past episode, and that is Brian Niccol. Brian Niccol is the former CEO of Taco Bell, which is owned by Yum Brands. So he was one of the presidents of inside of Yum Brands. He ran Chipotle from, I believe, 2018 until recently. And now he is the new CEO of Starbucks. For me personally, Brian Niccol has an ability to revitalize brands and steer companies towards significant growth, which I think is one of the core reasons why Starbucks tapped him as the new CEO. Thoughts, Larry?
Yeah, I mean, you can't really deny his effect on stock performance for companies. Chipotle was up almost 800% over the years that he ran the company. Um, he did a great job at Taco Bell. We talked about that in a prior episode, the items and the marketing that he came up with at Taco Bell. And, I totally agree with you. I think that's why Starbucks, paid what they paid to get him so that, I think they're envisioning a similar strategy, I think, at Starbucks to drive some returns.
I agree, because I feel like at Chipotle, he took a brand that was fighting food safety issues in
Yep. In
decline.
turmoil. Yep.
Yep, yep, and customer trust. And what did he really do? He implemented changes, including menu innovations, which
Yep.
I think we both agree Starbucks could use a little menu help,
Yep.
especially on the food side. Um, and he recovered the brand. I think he took
Yep.
them from what, 2,300 to 2,000, 3,000 in a
Yep.
stock split. As an investor, that is what we're looking for.
hmm
Um, Next up on my list is an industry in the financial services sector. Do you know who I'm going after?
I do. Let's see it. I know exactly who this is.
Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon. I love Jamie Dimon. He is the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. I cannot say enough amazing things about Jamie Dimon. Yes, I would trust him to take care of my kids for the next year without a problem. Um, Jamie, if you're listening, they're available. um, I will say one of the main reasons why I love Jamie Dimon isn't just because of his solid hand while leading. It's because he never sells any of JP Morgan's stock. In fact, he's only ever seen buying it, which for me as an investor is one of my core things I look for from a CEO. If a CEO is selling a stock, I tend to look at that as a question mark as to why are they doing this? What's your view on it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're investing in a company, you want to see the chief executive investing in the company, especially with their own money, because most of them do get plenty of equity from their compensation agreements. So it is always great to see them doubling down basically on their own performance. I know you and I have talked about SoFi with Anthony Noto. Pretty much every time he buys stock, I follow and buy some stock, even if it's like $100 or something. Um, what are your thoughts on SoFi?
I think SoFi is an amazing financial and bank stock, and I couldn't agree more. Every time Anthony Noto does buy stock, I tend to go in the same day or the following day. And even if I'm a few cents off, I'm buying right into that with him because if he's confident in going in at that level, and he tends to be buying in the thousands of shares with millions of dollars. If he's putting
Yep.
that much money in, um, I think I can afford $500 at that particular time on the stock, and again, CEO's buying, I'm buying.
Totally agree, 100%.
The next CEO on my list leads the tech sector. Who am I looking at? This might
Oh,
Tim Cook.
there you go.
Tim Cook. Tim Cook and Apple. Um, Tim Cook to me is someone I originally was like, I need to get out of Apple stock. To follow an icon like Steve Jobs, I'm like, there's no way this guy's succeeding. Like, traditionally, everybody usually fails as the successor to someone at that particular level. It's
Yeah,
just something that we always say, whether or not it's a head coach in football that's like an icon, and then the next one coming in, you're like, okay, this isn't going to go well. Tim Cook had that daunting challenge. And for me, um, he took Apple in a direction that I never saw them going,
hmm,
especially in the services sector, which they
right.
continue to grow at 20 to 30% a year. Um, it's just it's just amazing to see what he's done with Apple. What's your view?
Yeah, I mean, he basically turned Apple into a subscription business. The App Store has been huge cash cow for them for a long time. Um, and I think to your point, he had a really daunting task of succeeding Steve Jobs. I don't think anybody was ever gonna recapture that magic, but he basically found a way to take that magic and not reinvent it, but just adapt it a little bit um, with the subscription model. Um, it's very sticky. We've talked about stickiness in other areas like banking. I think he's helped create a really sticky platform in Apple.
I agree, and I think a lot of that stickiness comes from him being able to put out a new product line like the Apple Watch or the AirPods,
Yep.
which has been just a huge driver in
Hmm.
expanding that services division.
Yep.
And then everything that he's doing around Apple Music. I mean, he essentially took something that everybody knew as iTunes
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
and rebranded it. And now
Yeah,
we have
great point.
Apple Pay. There's so many different things that Apple has done under Tim Cook's leadership. And it's just another reason to say if you're going to buy stock in a company, look at the CEO. And so far in
Hmm.
the list, I do own stock in every single one of these companies.
Yep. Same.
The next up on the list, we're jumping into the automotive sector. And I may throw you for a loop on this one. A lot of you might be thinking I'm going with Elon Musk and Tesla, but I am not. And the main reason why is I would not trust Elon Musk to watch my children. Some people don't use that as an investing guideline, but that is important to me. I am going with um, Mary Barra. Did I just murder her name? And she is the CEO of GM.
No, I think that's the right pronunciation. Yeah.
Um, and for me, she is the first female CEO of a major global automaker, and her leadership at GM to me has been so transformative. Um, you know, she essentially has taken GM's transition to electric vehicles and positioned the company for the future. And GM was fledgling, and I feel like they're not fledgling anymore. And the stock over her leadership has continued to grow in a positive direction, which is what you want. Do you have any views one way or another on Mary?
I mean, the stock's done quite well, especially recently. Um, I don't really follow GM. I haven't really followed GM since the financial crisis. I personally didn't like that they took bailout money, but that's so many years ago at this point. Um, you can't really deny the stock performances has done quite well especially the last year. I think it's close to 40%,
Well, I mean,
forty
for
percent
me,
gain.
yeah, I mean, and again, for me, one of the big areas that I was like really looking at that I loved more than anything else was that she focused on a culture of safety at GM.
Mm-hmm.
And that was following the ignition switch scandal. I'm not sure if you remember that.
I do remember that. Yep.
And that was, similar to like Brian Nickel taking over at Chipotle after a food issue.
Mm-hmm.
She comes in following an ignition switch scandal
Yeah.
and took that forward looking vision and commitment to innovation and just pivoted GM in a more safety conscious to rebuild that trust.
Yeah.
And I feel like you need that so much more when we're talking about vehicles.
Yeah, I have a feeling that we're going to talk about another company that really needs to focus on safety issues, and it's not going to be in the top CEO section. Um, so if you're
Without
listening, this company that we're going to talk about later, learn from GM.
agreed. And next up on the list, Doug McMillan. A lot of people might not be familiar with Doug, but he's in the retail industry, and he is the CEO of Walmart. Um, Larry, do you have any thoughts on Doug?
I love this pick. Definitely kind of a sleeper pick because he's just kind of a ho hum guy, and I mean that as a compliment. Um, if I remember correctly, he worked up his way up internally through Walmart. He like started like in the retail stores, and just over the years worked his way up through the management chain and became the CEO. Like, who doesn't love that?
Yeah, I mean, like it basically tells you that if you start out, you can work your way
Hmm.
up. It is
Yep.
doable. It doesn't feel as much nowadays, but
Yeah.
Doug at Walmart is a perfect example because like what I love most about everything that he's doing is his investments in technology and being a
Hmm.
tech guy. And I'm talking about acquiring e-commerce platforms like jet.com, expanding into the grocery delivery service. Yes, I just want to put it out there. They were doing grocery full scale prior to the vid. Prior to the vid hitting, they were already in the grocery delivery service, which a lot of people might not be aware of. Um, and he's been so big into sustainability initiatives and focusing on something that Tim Cook has done amazing over at Apple, and that's supply chain efficiency.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, you know, and they didn't have to go out and find them.
Yep. Right. He was on the bench, just waiting. Yep.
Like, bring me in. And they brought
Yep.
him in, and it's been an amazing story ever since. Um, finally, um, Reed Hastings. He's no longer, um, he's now the former CEO of Netflix, but that's of, I believe, the beginning of this month. Um, and for me, Reed really is only done one thing negative, and he immediately pivoted out of that. And that's when he decided he was going to rebrand Netflix into, what was it, Quickster or something?
Yes, I remember that. Yeah,
And the stock just plummeted. And then he was like, what am I doing? Nope,
yeah.
we're keeping Netflix. But he essentially changed the entertainment industry. He took us from a world of Blockbuster, which nobody liked those fees. Am I right?
Nobody liked
Nobody.
those fees. Nobody likes fees in general.
Agree. Like late fee. Oh, you have a late fee. I was an hour late. I'm sorry. You still have a late fee there. Like,
Yeah, you didn't rewind the tape.
yeah. Oh my
Going
goodness.
back a ways.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh, we had to put it in
Yeah,
our automatic rewinder.
yeah.
But we won't go down that rabbit hole right now.
Look up VHS tapes, folks.
But his decision to invest heavily in original content for me was one of the main reasons why I loved Netflix from the early days. And I think I read he gave a guy as little as like $10,000 and said, go to a local film festival and start buying up indie films. And essentially, Netflix turned themselves into the largest indie distributor in the world, on top of
Yep.
everything else. And then they started making series like House of Cards, and I just can't say enough amazing things about Reed Hastings, his forward vision, and everything that he was able to do at Netflix. Now, he's left, and I kind of look at Netflix now personally as a ham sandwich, but I could be
Yeah.
wrong. And that's why I'm kind of like, I'm not abandoning ship right now, but I'm watching more closely today with the new CEO just taking over than I was 2 years ago.
Yeah, he Reed Hastings created a lot of millionaires. If you invested early, you did quite well. If you're still holding it, you're up like 50,000% since the stock went public, which is just insane. Um, I think he's still chairman of the board, if I remember correctly, but I don't think that's going to be permanent. I think like next year he's going to step down from the chairman of the board position too.
Yeah.
Um, Typically the CEO is normally the chairman, so or chairperson. So I think at least for the next year, um, it'll probably seem like a ham sandwich business to your point, because he'll still be involved. I do think that once he completely leaves, um, I will be watching for more radical changes that might not jive with what has made Netflix so successful to this point.
It's fair to say. I agree with all that. But with the good, and we have seen so much good so far in the list, there must be bad. And when I see bad, I see investing problems, Larry. I see investing problems. And I'm starting right at the top with my number one investing problem. David Calhoun, former CEO of
Let's see it. This is Boeing, isn't it? Yeah.
Boeing.
Yep.
Boeing.
I
David.
had a feeling we were talking about Boeing.
David, like, what were you doing? What was like? I
You're
can't.
you're an airplane manufacturer that outsourced plane manufacturing. Doesn't
Ah,
make any sense.
it's it's insane when you think about it. He took over as Boeing CEO in 2020 during the 737 MAX crisis,
Yep.
where the aircraft was grounded globally, following
Yep.
fatal crashes. And under his leadership, they got worse.
Yep. Down by
Doors,
half since 2020. Down by
people
half.
people are flying, and all of a sudden they realize, oh wait, there's no longer a door on my aircraft.
Yeah, it's not a good situation. You've got a lot of people being really vigilant now, where I don't think that was the case, 2 or 3 years ago, where people are getting on a plane with their phones, their camera phones out to record everything in case something happens.
And
Um,
I just want to like tell people, I was a hardcore Boeing investor for years. I sold all my Boeing stock. Like the 737 Max, I'm like, I'm out. Like I cannot do this anymore.
mhm.
And the reason is when you think about passenger air travel, there is Boeing, and then there's only one other Airbus. There's essentially a
Yeah, it's
duopoly,
a duopoly, yeah, basically.
duopoly in passenger airplane. There is no reason Boeing should be fledgling
Nope.
unless they just have really bad leadership. And under Calhoun, he took the bad, and which Brian Nickel took the bad, and he flipped it. Um, Mary Barra took the bad, she flipped it. Calhoun took the bad and made it worse. And
Yep.
that is why Boeing is on the list. I can't say whether or not it was how he handled the 737 MAX crisis, the production and quality issues, or the overall demolition that has occurred to all the investors through
Yep.
Boeing. Um, but stay away. Stay away if you're looking at investing in Boeing. Do not, do not even contemplate it. Look at it in like a year. See how they're doing. Maybe 2 years out. There's a long road to recovery,
Yeah.
and there's better places to put your money. Um,
Yeah, I am hoping that Kelly Ortberg is the who's the new CEO. I don't think you could. Okay. I don't think you could inherit a worse like crisis because they have crises. It's not just one thing. It's like a systemic issue with the company. I know one thing that he did immediately is he's going to be relocating to Seattle instead of sitting with the rest of the corporate employees, which I forget where. I think it's Illinois. It might be Maryland. One of those two. Um, I never understood why the corporate functions don't sit with the production people, because the people making the decisions about the production sit 2 or 3 time zones away. Um, I think if he can at least be on site, he can be a little bit more influential and not just make decisions based on numbers on a spreadsheet, which I think was part of Calhoun's problem.
Agreed. And moving on to the next one, and this is in the financial sector. Do you know where I'm going? Little stock trading platform called.
Let's see it. See it. I think it's Robin Hood.
It is
There it
Robinhood.
is.
Ah, where do I go with Vlad? Where do I go? If it's how he handled the GameStop trading controversy, by scrutinizing it, restricting trading on certain stocks that led to accusations of market manipulation. Um, Whether or not you look at how he faced legal and regulatory challenges, how they've been fined and investigated by the SEC, um, raising from concerns about the company's compliance practices and long-term visibility, or just overall decline or user trust. He checks a lot of boxes for me as to reasons I would never put my money in a company. Your views on Robinhood?
I enjoyed Robin Hood when I was first starting out investing. I think they had a great idea initially, which was, kind of democratizing investing. There used to be trading fees every time you bought or sold a stock, you had to pay a fee. Robinhood got rid of that, kind of kind of forced all the other brokerages to, um, have free trades, because before it was, $5 or $6 a trade. So you couldn't really buy and sell stocks regularly without having some extra budget for that. So I do think that they did have a positive impact on investing, from a call it retail investor standpoint. Um, One of the things I don't really like about Robinhood is I feel like the platform, it kind of seems like it's a gambling, like it's trying to like addict you to investing almost. Um, and I think they had an opportunity to focus on investor education, and they kind of gamified investing instead of focusing on that education perspective.
I would agree with all of that. And that's why we would not be buying stock in Robinhood. But it leads us to our final. And one of the core reasons we're doing this episode, a CEO that is near and dear to our hearts, that shouldn't be, but she's pretty bad. And that is Karen Lynch. And for anybody that's not aware, Karen Lynch is the CEO of CVS. Karen Lynch. She has been she has been the CEO since February of 21. She's took over CVS Health. They've experienced massive periods of underperformance from February 21 when she took over to August of 2024, Larry. CVS Health stock price has declined approximately 25%, underperforming the S&P 500 and pretty much every one of its healthcare industry peers. Over,
Yeah.
I just want to say that over the same period, United Health and Walgreens have seen more stable, Walgreens, more stable or even positive stock performance, highlighting to me Karen Lynch's inability to run CVS um, in that leadership position. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about 5-year performance of both companies. How about that? CVS and Walgreens. So CVS essentially flat over 5 years. I think it's down like 2 or 3% over 5 years, which is horrible, um, considering how the markets performed during that time period. Walgreens down almost 80% in that time period. Um, so I think Walgreens probably deserves an equal spot on this list. Um,
Okay.
I think you could lump CVS and Walgreens in there together. I just CVS. I'm a shareholder of CVS. I every share I own is in the red by quite a bit. I everything to me, every decision that can't to quote, George Costanza on Seinfeld, I will do the opposite. It's everything that Karen Lynch has done is wrong so far. And I mean, things have gotten so bad at Aetna that she's taking a direct leadership position in Aetna now. She's handling day-to-day operations, and that's where she came from. That's her bread and butter. And that's the biggest pain point at CVS right now is Aetna. Aetna is hemorrhaging money because there's an uptick in usage from procedures that weren't performed because of COVID, and they're being performed now the last couple of years, and
Yeah,
they
and
weren't ready for that.
I, I agree. And I think the Aetna acquisition, which, if I'm correct, completed in sometime in 2018,
Yep, it was the end
um,
of 18. Yep,
cost CVS roughly $70 billion.
yep, huge amount of
And
debt they had to take on.
huge debt. And at the time, they were talking about all these synergies that were going to occur that could total somewhere between 7 to 800 million annually, right?
Mm-hmm.
That have not
Have
materialized
not. Nope.
in any fashion And if so, if some have materialized, it's been so marginal that it hasn't really done
Yeah.
anything to the bottom line.
Yep. Yep. I mean, I don't think they could have anticipated, the like Mark Cuban shift to cost plus, a much more transparent reimbursement model. That I think is shaking up the entire industry. That's not just CVS that's grappling with that. That's the whole industry. I don't think they could have anticipated that. I think they need to react to that strongly. They need to move quickly. Um, one negative that I would give Karen is, I don't agree with the laying off of people that they did last year. I think there were operational changes they could have made instead of just quickly reacting to Wall Street and cutting payroll. I think that's something that, it's going to be a mistake moving forward because you lose a lot of institutional knowledge when you do stuff like that. Um,
One of the things to me was,
see,
that she pushed was the big health hub initiative, which was
yeah,
supposed to be designed to transform the CVS stores into healthcare destinations. And they were
yep.
supposed to have a goal of 1,500 stores done by the end of 2023. That's right, 1,500 done and completed by the end of 2023. We are now halfway through 2024, and I think they have roughly maybe 1,000 stores completed
With the hubs in them.
with the hubs in them. Um, and the hubs were supposed to drive 5 to 10% increase in sales for the stores, and they're not seeing that either. And
Yeah,
yet they just continue to go down this road, and there's no pivot, there's no change. It almost seems like the board of directors just doesn't care about the shareholders. And
those are the optics. I would agree with that. Yeah, just based on what we're seeing. Yep.
because look at something like Starbucks. They had a CEO that took over, and in less than 14 months, they didn't see the direction. They were like, okay, time to go. We need to
Right. We gotta
pivot.
go. Yep.
Karen Lynch has been there for years.
Yep.
And over those years, it just continues to go downwards. And it has peaks and then immediately falls off.
Yeah.
Um, for me, investor sentiment, you know, when you read through some of the analyst ratings, you look at the market outlooks,
Yep.
nobody's talking about CVS in a positive manner. The consensus for
No.
CVS is don't do anything. Don't buy it. Don't sell it. We're almost in a limbo mode where
Yeah.
it's like even the market analysts, the professionals are looking at this company like, you should be doing far better. Like, we don't want to
Yeah.
sell
Yeah.
you, but we also can't buy you.
Yeah. Even they don't know what to do with it. And I think some of that is you can't gain any momentum when you just keep making mistakes. And if they're not making a mistake, over here, on the healthcare side, when they talked about, oh, we're going to buy a healthcare company, and generally you can't come out and say you're going to buy a healthcare company and then not already have a deal lined up to announce, which I think was a huge blunder. They could have. I think the only worthwhile company in the space was One Medical. Um, and Amazon basically swooped in and bought One Medical right after that announcement. So kind of shot themselves in the foot there. And then they had to quickly react and pivot and buy Signify Health and Oak Street Health, both of which I think have been dogs for them. Um, so if you make a mistake, you have to react and, try to repivot. And they just keep making mistakes, keep making mistakes. I totally agree with you on the investor sentiment. All I can do right now is hold it, and at least the dividend yield has gone up because the stock is so depressed. Um, hold it and get a decent dividend out of it. But I think it's going to be a multi year hold to see any type of positive return.
Agreed. And if everything that we just said wasn't reason enough that Karen Lynch should be packing her bags and headed for the door, we now have the lawsuit, which, if everybody's not aware, was just brought, um, and it's a class action suit based around the stock price being inflated between May 3rd of 2023 and April 30th of 2024. To give you some perspective, the stock on May 3rd was trading around $69.75 per share. And on April of 2024, the stock price ranged between $66.75 and $79.98, with extreme volatility during those periods. And ever since, it's just been in like a downward trend. The stock just continued to trade. As of today, I believe roughly below $60. I'm not sure if it's got above $60 today, but it's been sitting around the 57 to 59 range.
Yep.
And just continues to flagellate. And I'm like, board of directors, what are you doing? Like, Karen's not addressing the Medicare Advantage challenges. She's not addressing the declining operating income issues by, or the ineffective management of the Aetna acquisition. Like, if you look at the CEO, they should be acknowledging these issues and providing a detailed plan to investors on how the company is going to turn it all around. And I feel
Yeah.
like, she and the board continue to double down on the same strategies that have brought us to this point. And I just
Yep.
don't think they're equipped. I don't think they're equipped to fix it.
No, it doesn't seem that. It doesn't seem like they're equipped. And to your point, it kind of sounds like the board is looking more out for Karen and the board than they are for the company and the shareholders. Um, from what I've read online, which I understand it's online, so say what you will. I think employee sentiment is quite low. I think the approval rating for the CEO by the employees is quite low. And I think I think it's an easy beginning of a turnaround. Would be a leadership change, because quite frankly, they're running out of people to get rid of, to scapegoat. Sometimes you just have to start over.
Agreed. And I think to your point, when you discussed the innovation that Mark Cuban is currently doing in the sector, this is something that you would have thought CVS would have been out in front of, and they seem to just be following.
Yeah.
They're lagging behind in so many ways in terms of innovation. Um, as the competitors continue to move ahead with new models, Karen and the rest of CVS leadership just doesn't seem to have a clear vision. And I can't even say
Yeah.
that enough, a clear vision on how to keep pace with itself in this critical area. And I'm just like, the industry, it's like they're fighting to catch up. And that's not something I want in
Yeah.
a company that I own. But I'm like an analyst. I feel like trapped. I'm like, do I sell it? Do I buy it? And I have pared back. Full
Mm,
disclosure, I have pared back a little bit over time, over the past year. I still own CVS because I am hopeful. I believe in the brand. I believe in what they're doing. I just don't believe in the leadership. And I
yeah.
do
I think that's a great way of putting it.
that you can believe in the brand.
Yeah, I think the brand has great appeal. There are people that love CVS. They love going into the stores. They love the front store. They love the convenience. They love the staff in the stores. Um, I just think the leadership has failed. Um, the executive leadership at CVS has failed, and they can't. So, sometimes it takes big companies a little bit longer to kind of steer the ship in the right direction. But a multi-year downturn like this, quite frankly, for a company that pretty much had the market cornered, um, from from an insurance perspective, from a healthcare perspective, from a pharmacy perspective, it's just kind of stunning and unacceptable if you're, quite frankly, if you're a shareholder.
And I'm going to put it out there, and it's going to be an extreme view, Larry. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I love
Bill
extreme views from you. Let's
Bill
go.
Ackman, if you're listening, Bill, and I know you are, do for CVS what you did for Chipotle. Come in, start buying up enough of the stock, get the activist side involved, save the shareholders, help save the shareholders of CVS. The brand has potential, but we
Yep.
need someone from the outside with enough clout to come in and give those shareholders a voice, to get Karen and how many other board of directors that continue to keep her in place out. They need to
Yeah.
go. Get your bags, pack them up, hit the door. We need CVS moving forward. That's it.
Yep.
That's how I'm looking. We need an extreme investor, and I think Bill Ackman, you're the guy to do it.
Yeah, and to your point about kind of being in a limbo with the stock, this is a great reason why we set it and forget it because you gotta just if you've got money in something and it starts doing, something like this where CVS has been not doing well really the last few years. They did great during COVID. They had all those COVID vaccines that, they got to administer to help get us out of the pandemic. Um, haven't really done well since because you can't just rely on pandemics to run a business. Um, you set it and forget it. You could ride these things out, which is kind of what the analysts are suggesting. They don't know what to do with it. The people that own the stock don't know what to do with it. Um, so, me personally, as a shareholder, I'm going to stay the course and see where things take us. They can't get much worse, really. They cannot get much worse. So, you might as well ride it out.
I agree. I do think that you know, they knew that we both agree they need change. And whether or not you're looking at the inadequate communication and transparency issues, the slow reaction to market condition problems, um, it just continues to paint the picture of the person running the ship may be a
Yeah.
phenomenal person, may be super nice, kind, loving type of person you want to sit down. They just might be over their head.
Yep.
And I think that that's what we have with Lynch is she's just over her head, and she may be a great CEO for a particular company in a particular condition,
Yep.
but she's not a turnaround. She's not somebody qualified to turn around this company.
Right. It's just like Laxman for Starbucks. To me, it's a very similar, very similar thing. He just didn't have what Starbucks needed, and it's nothing about him personally. He just wasn't the person that the company needs at this time to go forward. And I think that's where CVS is with Karen.
Agreed. Do you have anything else to add to this issue?
I think we summed it up pretty well. If you own it, keep it. If you don't own it, keep not owning it.
Um, I couldn't agree more. And with that said, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this episode of Unfoolish Investing. I hope you enjoyed learning about some of the top CEOs in the industry, why we invest in those companies, and the bad CEOs, and why to skip them.
Yeah. Steer clear.
Hit like, hit subscribe, look out for our shorts. Until next time, we thank you for joining us on this investing journey.